something's happened. Your father, he had a heart attack. He didn't make it.
If you've ever seen an episode of How I Met Your Mother, then you know that despite its high-concept, long-form mystery structure, it was a show that generally liked to lean into its sillier side.
It's gonna be legend. Wait for it. And I hope you're not lactose intolerant because the second half of that word is dairy.
So it might surprise casual fans to learn that the series was also more than capable of delivering the occasional dramatic body blow to its audience. Dedicated fans, on the other hand, will know that the show's mission was to explore the mileposts of life for the 20 to 30-something set. And some of those milestones could be pretty emotional. But before someone gets lawyered, why not take a moment to subscribe to the Nerdstalgic channel? The 13th episode of How I Met Your Mother's 6th season was called Bad News, and it came at a time when the ongoing story was leading fans to expect Jason Segel's Marshall Erickson and his wife Lily, played by Allison Hannigan, might soon conceive a child.
Can't imagine anything bringing me down right now.
The episode's A-plot found the couple visiting a fertility expert after failing to get pregnant after a mere 6 days. That fertility expert is played by cast regular Neil Patrick Harris, who also stars as Barney Stinson. This is notable because in a previous episode, Marshall and Lily had, for reasons we won't get into, decided that meeting Barney's doppelganger will be the sign that they're ready to have children.
So you weren't wearing a fake beard and examining girl parts all day?
Not today, I wasn't.
The doctor quickly determines that Lily is fertile, which causes Marshall to assume that the problem must lie with his sperm. Now, Marshall had long been established to be extremely close to his family, especially his father, Marvin, played by Bill Fagerbakke, but as the episode establishes, Marshall only likes to call his father with good news.
I'm getting married! Yeah! I passed the bar! All right!
So the thought of having to tell his dad he can't give him grandchildren hits him particularly hard. As a result, he spends much of the episode avoiding his father, but circumstances eventually force him into talking it over with his parents, and after they reassure him they'll love him no matter what, he takes a fertility test himself, and then spends a whole day nervously waiting for the results. In the final minutes of the installment, Marshall visits the doctor and learns that despite his worst fears, he's actually perfectly capable of having children.
My sperm is fine!
After celebrating with his friends, he tries to call his father to deliver the good news, but receives no answer. At that moment, Lily arrives in a cab, and though many viewers expected her to announce that she was pregnant, instead she emerged with tears in her eyes and broke the bad news about his father's fatal heart attack.
He didn't make it.
The moment was absolutely devastating both in-universe and out, but why did it hit so hard? Well, for 6 seasons, Marshall had been the mostly goofy, kind-hearted optimist of the How I Met Your Mother gang. Considered by at least some to be the only thoroughly likable main character on the show, he was depicted as a sensitive man with a charming naivete. He was the type who never judged or gave up on his friends, and was in many ways the heart of the group. All qualities that made him very easy for fans to identify with and feel empathy for.
I'm Marshall Erickson, but you can call me Hercules!
So, watching him, of all the friends, take an emotional beating was particularly rough. Adding to the tragedy was that Marvin himself was a beloved reoccurring character who made numerous appearances over the course of the show's first 6 seasons.
It's a combination of the two. We call it basket ball.
Not ice skip ball?
Ice ket ball? Just sounds weird.
In fact, the series spent more time with the Ericksons than with any other character's family, so fans knew Marvin well and clearly understood his relationship and importance to Marshall. That meant they didn't have to pretend to care. And thanks to Segel's tender performance, it was obvious how much Marshall felt that loss. Making it particularly impressive was that despite the gravity of the moment, the writers didn't script Marshall's pivotal reaction to the bad news. Series creators Carter Bays and Craig Thomas instead decided that they wanted to try and get a more naturalistic reaction from Segel. To pull it off, the actors rehearsed using a script with a fake ending. According to Segel, in the script we received, the last scene was, "Marshall, I'm pregnant." And then they told us on the day, no, that's not what's happening, and they gave us the alternate pages. Minutes before the scene was actually shot, Hannigan was finally told what her real line would be. Segel, however, chose not to hear the dialogue, later recalling, "I didn't want to know what she was going to say to me when she got out of that cab." To make it work, they figured out a way for him to know his cue without knowing her exact line. According to the actress, she informed Segel only that the last word of the sentence he was to react to was "it." Once cameras rolled, Segel would then obviously only get one chance at a natural reaction, and the crew would only get one chance to film it, but despite the pressure, he would later say, "I knew the overall premise, but she came out and she was already crying, and it was so heartbreaking and it made acting very easy." all I had to do was react in that scene. I didn't have to dig very deep. So the footage you see in the finished episode, in which Marshall quietly embraces his wife before breaking down in tears, is Siegel's improvised performance and his line,
My dad said, I'm not ready for this.
was made up on the spot. Bays would later call the shoot the hardest scene we've ever done, even noting that he couldn't even watch while Siegel spoke his lines. But the characters, situations, and performances were arguably only part of what made the final revelation feel so explosive. You see, way back at the beginning of the episode, eagle-eyed viewers might have noticed that sitting pretty much dead in the middle of the frame was a pamphlet with a red number 50 on it. And from there on out, every segment of the show had a number or multiple numbers appear somewhere in the scenery, props, or dialogue.
Motility 5. Ooh.
Counting down from that initial 50. The countdown goes on for so long and is so expertly woven into the production design that by the time it nears its conclusion, even the least observant viewer will have noticed it. It finally ends right in the closing moments when Lily arrives to deliver the bad news to Marshall in a cab with the identification number of 001. The last message in the sequence to appear are the words, "Time expired," which are written on a nearby parking meter. Bays and Thomas have noted that the countdown gimmick was a homage to the 1988 Peter Greenaway film, Drowning by Numbers, which also features a similar countdown, albeit one that starts at 100. The show's producers borrowed the idea because, in Bays' words, we knew we wanted to do something that sort of announced to the audience early on in the episode that we're heading towards a big moment. Adding, it's hard to create a sense of foreboding on a 22-minute CBS sitcom. We wanted it to be a sucker punch, but we wanted to balance the sucker to punch ratio. The countdown gimmick ultimately proved divisive among some commentators who felt it made an otherwise natural-feeling moment seem contrived. But for much of the fanbase, the sucker punch seemed to have landed as intended, and the intent was heartbreak. Carter and Bays felt that loss was a part of life, and after 6 seasons of showing characters growing up, they had earned the right to show one of them experiencing death and grieving without it feeling cheap or manipulative. And indeed, subsequent episodes would find Marshall coping with the loss like a real person, awkwardly trying to figure out how he'll ever be a good father without guidance from the man who taught him everything.
My dad was my hero. And he was my teacher. And he was my best friend.
The shakeup would eventually lead Marshall to become a more mature father and husband, which was a rare example of something we don't see too often: genuine growth in a sitcom character. That's partially because, for an ensemble comedy, changing any character in a way that could upset the comedic balance is risky. And doing it by putting a beloved character through a tragedy that might be genuinely depressing to viewers looking for a laugh is even riskier. But subverting the widely held expectation that the family-oriented Marshall would soon have a child by putting him through the loss of his own father and then using that loss to shape him into the dad he never knew he could be was a risk that paid off big time. God knows, not every risk How I Met Your Mother took paid off so well, but that one was really nothing short of heartbreaking genius. So, what do you think? Was Bad News the most heartbreaking episode of How I Met Your Mother? And if it wasn't, what was? Let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely find others you like if you check out the rest of the channel. As always, thank you for subscribing to Nerdstalgic.